I planned the night like a rebuild, the kind where you strip an engine to the block and put it back together without a single leftover bolt. Same white tablecloths, same corner booth where I asked Lauren to marry me, same tiny candle that used to make her eyes look like a promise. I shaved twice. I ironed the shirt she always said made me look like I'd finally learned how to listen. 10 years married doesn't get a do-over, but it can get a reset if you're disciplined and lucky. I brought luck in my pocket. A small velvet box with a thin gold bracelet that wouldn't shout, just nod. At 6:45 I was early, because I've always been early. The maitre d' gave me the look a man gives another man who's trying. Not pity, not approval, just a quiet handshake of respect. I texted Lauren, "Can't wait to see you tonight." The bubbles popped up, disappeared, came back. A heart emoji landed. Not words, not effort, not an apology for the last months of late nights and hollow explanations, just a graphic doing the job conversation used to do. I told myself it was fine. I told myself 100 things that sounded like patience and tasted like denial. By 7:15, I was on my second club soda because I wanted my head clean. By 7:45, my phone lit again. Stuck at work. You go ahead. I looked at the message until the pixels blurred, then set the phone face down next to the wrapped box. Like they were two witnesses who'd tell different stories under oath. The booth across from me stayed empty, but it was full of memories. The night we planned a road trip that never happened. The time she laughed so hard at a waiter's joke she cried. The half-fights that died because I reached across the table and took her hand before pride could win. Hope sat where she was supposed to be, stubborn and stupid, and refused to leave. I watched the door to make sure no more lies walked through it. That was the plan. Pay, stand, go home, and pretend I didn't feel like a man who'd been pulled over and asked if he knew why. Then the door opened, and she came in wearing a dark red dress I had never seen. Not scrubs from the clinic, not the sensible navy she wore for meetings. Red. The kind of red that doesn't happen by accident. Her hair was curled like a magazine told her to do it, and she wasn't alone. The man beside her carried himself like he was used to getting the last word and the first seat. He leaned into her, broad shoulders, easy smile, the kind of laugh that invites a crowd to agree. My legs moved before my thoughts, the same way a hand moves for a wrench it's used 1,000 times. I picked up the wrapped box, felt the small weight of what could have been, and walked the aisle like a man clocking out. The room understood before my mouth did. Forks paused. Someone coughed. Silverware and gossip both went quiet. I set the box gently between their wine glasses because I am not a man who throws. Up close, the dress was even louder, and the perfume was the one she never wore on weekdays. He looked at the box like it might be a trick. She looked at me like I'd arrived at the wrong party. I kept my voice steady enough to hammer nails with. "Happy anniversary, Lauren." He started with, "Hey man." The way a guy starts when he thinks he can smooth a dent by talking to it. I didn't look at him. Don't. One word. Not a threat. Not a bark. Just a boundary finally spoken out loud. I lifted my phone so the screen faced her. The text glowed. Stuck at work. The 3 words that were supposed to keep the old story alive. She opened and closed her mouth like the first seconds after a smoke alarm, when you haven't decided whether to panic or pretend it's the batteries. She reached for my sleeve, and I watched my own arm refuse her like it had trained for this moment. There are a dozen things a man can say when the ground gives out. I chose none of them. I turned, and the maitre d' was already there because he had read the wind. I slid my reservation across the stand with 2 fingers. "Cancel it." He nodded once, the way men nod when they see a job done clean. He didn't look at her, or at the other guy, or at the box sitting like a small, polite explosion between 2 wine glasses. He recognized the customer paying his bill and closing his tab for an entire decade. I didn't look back. Not because I was noble, not because I wanted the room to crown me king of dignity, but because what's behind a man at that moment is a trap baited with history. The door let out a breath when I pushed it open. Outside, the air had the kind of bite that wakes you up fully. I stood there for 10 seconds and listened to the city move around me like nothing had happened. Somewhere inside, a laugh started again, low and careful, as if everyone had agreed to pretend a little harder. I walked to my truck with my hands empty and my head clear. Anger didn't boil, it settled. There's a difference between rage and heat. Rage wants to break the table. Heat hardens steel. I put the key in the ignition and didn't turn it yet. I thought about the corner booth, the tiny candle, the first yes, the 1,000 small no's that followed, and the red dress that finally said out loud what the lies had been whispering. 10 years is a long time to hold a line alone. Tonight I put the rope down. When I started the engine, it sounded normal, which is what a good engine does when the driver changes. I pulled out slowly. You don't peel out when you've already won the only argument that counts, the one where you decide who you are. The next morning I woke with the taste of copper in my mouth, the kind that comes from grinding your teeth all night. The bracelet box sat on my dresser like a crime scene photo, unopened, evidence of a plan that died in the booth. I didn't throw it. I didn't smash it. Men like me don't waste motion. We store it, we sharpen it, we use it when the time matters. I told myself last night it was a one-off vision, a trick of bad light and worse timing. Maybe Lauren had come in after me. Maybe I'd misunderstood. But hope, I was starting to learn, is the laziest liar of all. By noon, I had no appetite for excuses. I went back to the restaurant. Same maitre d', same low hum of cutlery and conversation. He didn't ask why I was there. His eyes said he already knew. I asked for the booth. He gave a tiny nod, the kind a man gives when he knows what it costs to walk into a wound. And there she was, not in scrubs, not in her office blazer, in the red dress again, like the universe wanted me to remember. This time I didn't sit and wait. I walked straight through the aisle like a man who had built the floorboards himself. The box was still in my pocket, heavier than any tool I'd ever carried. They were mid-laughter, hers tilted back. His leaning forward like gravity had a personal arrangement with him. He wasn't some stranger anymore. He was Derek Collins, an insurance consultant I'd seen once at a neighbor's barbecue. The type who shakes your hand too long and calls you, buddy, like he's already sold you something. I didn't rush. That's the secret most men don't learn. The slower you move, the more everyone else freezes. Conversations stalled. Glasses hovered halfway to lips. By the time I set the wrapped box between their wine glasses, the entire room had braced for impact. Happy anniversary, I said. No crack in my voice, no tremor. Just flat steel laid on the table. Lauren's laugh died mid-breath. Derek looked at me, then at her, then back at me with the dumb courage of a man who's never had to pay for his mistakes. Hey man, he started, like I was about to join them for drinks. I cut him off with one word, don't. The phone was already in my hand. The text glowed like a confession. Stuck at work. The color drained from her face, and for the first time in months, I knew I wasn't crazy. Every late meeting, every overtime excuse, every don't wait up. It all condensed into a single lie that fit on one screen. She reached across the table, her hand shaking just enough for me to see the fear. I didn't flinch. I let the silence work, and silence, when fed the truth, is louder than any fist through drywall. I canceled the reservation with the maitre d'. His eyes never left mine. He knew whose side the truth sat on. I didn't look back at her, or him, or the box still sitting between them like a grenade with the pin out. The crowd didn't whisper. They didn't need to. Everyone saw what I saw. A wife dressed for someone else, a lie caught in real time, and a husband who chose steel over spectacle. The air outside hit my face like a verdict. I walked to my truck and started the engine. This time I didn't wait. I drove off with the kind of clarity men spend half their lives begging for in therapists' offices. Lauren thought the damage was done when I saw her in that dress. She didn't know the real damage was just beginning, not to me, but to the story she thought she controlled. Because once the truth gets a witness, it doesn't go back in the box. Dawn slid in like a thief, a thin blade of light across my eyelids. My phone was already buzzing itself raw on the nightstand. I thought it was just Lauren, pounding out apologies that read like contracts she never intended to honor. But when I finally reached for it, the screen wasn't filled with her name. It was filled with everyone else's. Friends, co-workers, even my neighbor who never waved except when borrowing my ladder. Every message carried the same cargo. Saw this yet? Is this you? Man, I'm sorry. I opened the first link and there it was. 3 angles, shaky but merciless, of last night's scene. Strangers at the restaurant had turned my private wreck into a public theater. One video had a caption, "Anniversary ambush." Another, "Caught red-handed." The internet didn't miss, not this time. I should have felt gutted. 10 years of marriage reduced to a viral clip that people rewatched over eggs and coffee. But what I felt instead was something sharper and cleaner. Relief, because finally, I wasn't the only one carrying the truth like a secret infection. For once, the world had receipts, and Lauren couldn't gaslight her way out of a camera roll. At 8 a.m., the front door opened. Lauren stumbled in wearing a hoodie too big for her, the kind women put on when they want to look small and harmless. Her eyes were red, her hair a tangle, her posture a plea. "Please listen," she said. I stayed seated at the table, scrolling through reposts. I didn't even raise my head. It wasn't what it looked like. The laugh that escaped me was low and mean, the kind of sound a man makes when a lie finally becomes funny. I set the phone down so she could see the paused frame. Her in the red dress, Derek leaning in, my hand delivering the box. Frozen truth. "It was exactly what it looked like," I said. "On our anniversary." Her breath hitched. She tried again. "I swear, Ryan, it was just dinner. Just talking. Talking in a dress you don't wear for me. Talking in a booth you knew we owned. Talking while I sat 30 feet away with a box in my hand." Every word I said was slow, deliberate, as if I were laying brick. She flinched at each one. She reached out, palms open, as though proximity might bend the truth. "I didn't plan. You planned plenty. The dress, the curls, him. You just didn't plan on a crowd with cameras." Her silence was louder than her lies. The hoodie sagged around her, swallowing the version of her she wanted to present. Humble, repentant, cornered. But the internet doesn't erase. Every angle of that room, every hushed gasp, every eye that watched. It all lived forever now. I leaned back in the chair and folded my arms. "Do you know what I feel right now?" She shook her head. "Relief, because for months I thought I was losing it. Though maybe I was paranoid, bitter, seeing shadows that weren't there. But now I've got 300 strangers who saw the same thing I did. And not one of them believes you were stuck at work." Her lips moved like she wanted to form a counterargument, but she couldn't find the script, not when the evidence was already out there, replaying with every swipe of a stranger's thumb. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a coworker. "Standing with you, brother. Whatever you need." Another message. "Saw the video. Don't let her spin it." For once, I didn't feel alone. The whole damn town had been handed front row seats to my betrayal, and instead of pity, I felt power. The lie wasn't mine to carry anymore. Lauren's voice cracked. "We can fix this." "No," I said, standing now. "You can try to explain it. You can try to edit it. You can try to bury it under apologies. But fixing it? That would have required not breaking it in the first place." I walked past her without slowing, grabbed my jacket, and opened the door. She reached after me, fingers brushing air, but I didn't stop. Outside, the morning smelled like wet asphalt and coffee grounds from the diner down the street. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't check. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't need more information. I had enough. Behind me, the house that used to be home stood quiet, waiting to see if I'd come back. I didn't. Some men lose themselves when their private pain becomes public. Me, I found myself in it, because when the world already knows, there's nothing left to hide. And that's when a man can finally start fighting on his own terms. The house had a new sound when I stepped back inside that evening. Hollow, like drywall without insulation. 10 years of shared echoes, and now every creak in the floorboards reminded me I was the only one still listening. Lauren sat at the kitchen table in the same hoodie, sleeves pulled over her hands like a teenager caught sneaking in past curfew. She started the second I dropped my keys in the bowl. "I made a mistake," she said. I stood there long enough to let the words rot in the air. Then I leaned against the counter. "A mistake is forgetting milk." A mistake is leaving the garage light on. What you did is a pattern. Her eyes darted to mine, then away. It wasn't love, Ryan. It was an escape. I don't want him. I want us. I shook my head slowly. No, you didn't want to get caught. That's what the red dress was for. The lie was for me. The laugh was for him. Not a single piece of that night was for us. She flinched but pushed forward, desperation making her bold. I swear, it meant nothing. 10 years of my life isn't nothing. My trust isn't nothing. The booth where I asked you to marry me sure as hell isn't nothing. She stood now, reaching, but I stepped back. My phone buzzed on the counter. Her mother's name lit up the screen. Call me. We need to talk. I let it buzz out. Even her family was trying to triangulate damage control, as if this was a PR crisis instead of a marriage funeral. Lauren's voice broke into bargains. We can go to counseling. We can take a trip. Just give me a chance to show you I'm sorry. I picked up my keys again. You had a chance. You had 10 years of them. Her breath caught. Where are you going? To see someone who deserves honesty. The look on her face twisted between confusion and fear, like she didn't know if I meant another woman or just myself. Either way, she knew the door was closing. When I stepped outside, the night air hit me clean. No perfume, no lies, just oxygen. My phone lit again. This time it was Mike Ramirez, my best friend since high school, the kind of man who didn't sugarcoat but never kicked a buddy when he was already down. Saw the video. Drinks tonight? I typed back one word. Yes. The house behind me sighed like an abandoned building. Maybe it always had. Maybe I just stopped ignoring the sound. O'Malley's smelled the way it always did, old varnish, stale beer, and the fried onion rings that glued regulars to their stools. The floor was sticky. The jukebox wheezed out a Tom Petty track, and none of it cared about heartbreak. That's why I came. Mike Ramirez was already there, leaning back in the booth with 2 glasses sweating on the table. He didn't hug me, didn't ask if I was okay. He just pushed the whiskey across the table like a mechanic handing over a wrench. I stared at the glass, then took a slow sip. It burned in a way that felt honest. Mike broke the silence first. Hell of a clip making the rounds. You didn't swing, didn't scream, didn't make a scene. Half the town thinks you're a monk with a steel spine. I snorted. Steel spine, huh? It felt more like concrete boots. Doesn't matter what it felt like. It matters what they saw. And what she saw. You didn't lose your temper. You left her in silence. That's worse than shouting. I let that sit. The jukebox clicked to the next song. My fingers drummed against the glass. Not from nerves, but from gears turning in my head. Mike leaned in, voice low. So, what are you going to do? Not feel. Not complain. Do. That's when something in me shifted. The grief was still there, but it hardened, calcified into something sharper. I pulled a napkin toward me and started writing like I was drafting blueprints. Step 1. Consult a lawyer. Step 2. Secure evidence. Step 3. Go still in public. Step 4. Stop being her shield. I underlined step 4 twice. Mike raised an eyebrow. That looks a lot like revenge. I shook my head. No. Revenge is fire, messy, loud. Burns the guy holding the torch too. This is balance. She tipped the scale. I'm just setting it back. He studied me, then gave a small grin. Balance, huh? Haven't heard you talk like that since we rebuilt your old Chevy block by block. Calm. Focused. Dangerous. I took another sip and let the burn sink into my bones. Smashing things, shouting at her, that'd be giving her center stage. I'm done with theater. This isn't about breaking her. It's about building me back up without her in the way. Mike clinked his glass against mine. That's the Ryan I know. You take your time, you measure twice, and when you cut, it's clean. I thought about Lauren's face across the table. The panic when I held up the phone with her text. Panic isn't love. Panic is exposure. She was scrambling not because she lost me, but because she lost control of the story. Not anymore. I folded the napkin, slid it into my pocket like it was a blueprint worth guarding. First thing tomorrow, I will meet with a lawyer. No grand speeches, just paper. Paper first. Mike leaned back, satisfied. Good. Because paper doesn't lie. Paper doesn't forget. Paper is how you make silence permanent. The jukebox croaked into another song. I drained the glass, set it down hard enough to rattle the table, and stood. "Where are you going?" Mike asked. "Home. To get some sleep. Big day tomorrow." For the first time in months, the word day didn't feel like something to endure. It felt like something to use. I walked out of O'Malley's into the night air, the sticky floor behind me, the napkin plan burning in my pocket like a fuse that wasn't rushing, just waiting. Grief was still there, sure, but now it has a job. The morning came without drama. No rain against the windows, no lightning bolt of clarity. Just sunlight across a floor that hadn't felt like home in months. Lauren was still upstairs, pretending to sleep, or maybe hiding from it. I didn't bother to check. My bag was already packed with what mattered. Screenshots, timestamps, the viral clips downloaded and saved in 3 formats, the napkin plan smoothed out and folded twice. Dana Porter's office didn't look like much. Small space above a dental practice, blinds half closed, the faint smell of burnt coffee. But she was the kind of lawyer I wanted. Quiet, clinical, efficient. The kind who doesn't care about your sob story, only about what can be proven. She shook my hand once, sat, and said, "Documents first. Paper wins. Tell me what you brought." I slid the stack across the desk. Printed texts, screenshots, a thumb drive with the videos, even my phone set to airplane mode in case we needed to pull something live. Her eyes didn't flicker. She just laid everything out like evidence in a lab. "You've already done most of my job," she said, flipping through the stack. "She can't rewrite this. Public record, time-stamped, third-party witnesses. Viral clips are a nightmare for her. A gift for you." Hearing it out loud, I felt a weight come off my shoulders. Not joy, not vindication, just release. Dana typed as she talked, her fingers steady. "We'll file fast. Petition, supporting evidence, protective measures on assets. She'll have no room to stall or spin." Every signature I put down felt like a chain snapping off. 10 years of being the firewall for her excuses, the one who absorbed her absences and made them believable, done. I wasn't filing for revenge. I was filing for the truth. Dana looked up once, her expression flat. "You're calm. That's good. Calm men win." "I'm done shouting," I said. "Silence and paper. That's it." "Exactly." She gathered the files, clipped them tight, and gave me a small nod. "By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll already be happening." When I left the office, the sun seemed brighter. Not softer, not kinder, just honest. I checked my phone. "Lauren, we can fix this." "Lauren, don't make a decision you'll regret." "Lauren, please, Ryan." Regret. Funny words. Regret belongs to men who sit in bars 20 years later telling strangers how they should have left when they had the chance. I wasn't going to be that man. I thumbed the messages once, then backed them up like everything else. Not because I needed more evidence, but because I wanted the record airtight. She'd lied enough. No more edits. Walking to the truck, I realized something. The night I left the restaurant, I thought the hardest part would be keeping my anger in check. I was wrong. The hardest part was learning that control isn't clenched fists or raised voices. It's paperwork with your name at the bottom, filed in a courthouse that doesn't care about tears. When the engine turned over, it sounded steady, just like it always had. The only difference was me. I wasn't the man waiting in a booth anymore. I was the man who walked out, and now I had the paper to prove it. There'd been a get-together on the calendar for weeks. Nothing grand, just one of those community hall evenings where friends, coworkers, and cousins orbit around cheap catering trays and rented folding chairs. Before the red dress, Lauren would have treated it like a stage production. Hair appointment booked, outfit debated, social script rehearsed. After the videos went viral, she asked me only one question. "Are you going?" I didn't answer. Silence carried more weight than words. Saturday night, the parking lot was full. Her car was already there. Through the hall's big windows, I could see the outlines of people moving around in their Sunday best clothes, clutching plastic cups, voices humming like bees. I sat in my truck, headlights off, watching. Lauren walked in alone. She wore a dress too formal for the event. Navy blue silk, cut sharp, deliberate. It was armor disguised as elegance. Heads turned as she passed, whispers trailing in her wake. Every phone in that room had seen her lie. Every eye now measured her against the woman in the red dress. Inside, I knew she'd be scanning constantly, looking for me, for the man she betrayed to stand beside her and take the edge off. For a decade, I'd been that shield. Tonight, she faced the storm without me. My phone buzzed. Text after text from friends at the event stacked up. "Where are you, man?" "She's here. Looks lost without you. People are whispering. Wish you were inside." I typed nothing. The silence would do the work. Through the window, I caught sight of Mike Ramirez stepping outside for a smoke. He spotted my truck in the shadows and walked over, flicking the lighter shut. "You're not going in," he said. "No," I replied. He nodded slowly, exhaling smoke toward the night sky. "Smart. Let the silence talk. Everybody in there's already written their verdict." I could see Lauren through the glass. A stiff smile plastered on, moving from cluster to cluster, trying to catch the rhythm of conversations that slipped away from her. Every polite nod looked forced. Every laugh came half a beat late. She wasn't running the script anymore. The room was. Mike leaned against my truck. "She keeps checking the door. Doesn't get it yet. You being absent is louder than you being present." I kept my eyes on her silhouette. Exactly. If I walk in there, I give her cover. I become part of the spin. The forgiving husband, the man who stands by her despite everything. But if I stay out here, she stands alone in her own truth. Mike grinned sideways. "Cold. I like it." "It's not cold," I said, voice steady. "It's balanced." Back inside, someone must have asked her about me. I saw her shake her head, lips forming a story too far away to hear. But the room's body language told the truth. Shoulders stiff, eyes skeptical, conversations cutting short. A decade of my silence had covered her patterns. Now, one night of my absence was stripping the paint clean. Another text rolled in from a buddy. "Man, it's brutal. Are you staying outside?" I answered for the first time, "Yeah." The reply came back, "Respect." Mike stubbed out his cigarette. "She's unraveling in there. You don't have to lift a finger." "Exactly the point," I said. The minutes stretched. Eventually, I saw her retreat to a chair at the edge of the room, fiddling with her phone, jaw tight, alone in a crowd. The navy dress didn't shine anymore. It sagged like a costume from a canceled play. I sat back in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel but no urge to start the engine yet. I wanted the image burned into memory. Her sitting in the hall we used to walk into as a pair, now just one actor without her partner. The stage lights too bright, the audience too informed. For the first time since this all began, something inside me eased. Not a smile, not joy, but a quiet internal nod. Silence was doing the heavy lifting. When Mike tapped the roof of my truck and said, "Let's get out of here," I finally turned the key. The engine purred, steady and strong. As I pulled away, the hall shrank in the rear view, full of whispers that weren't mine to manage anymore. And in that absence, I realized I'd reclaimed something she could never touch: the power of not showing up. By Friday, the papers were ready. Dana Porter didn't waste time. Petition filed, evidence stapled, everything served with the efficiency of a hammer hitting a nail flush on the first swing. That morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, waiting. At 9:10 sharp, there was a knock. The process server stood on the porch, a folder in hand, expression neutral. He asked her name, confirmed it, and handed her the envelope like it was nothing more than certified mail. Lauren's face went gray. "What is this?" "Closure," I said, without looking up from my book. She ripped it open, skimmed, and then the performance began. Tears, bargaining, every stage of grief compressed into a frantic 10-minute reel. "Ryan, please. We can fix this. I'll go to counseling. I'll change. I'll cut Derek off. You'll never hear his name again." I turned a page. "You already rewrote the script. I'm just refusing to play the role anymore. She came closer, voice breaking. Don't do this. Don't throw us away. I looked at her then, calm, steady. I didn't throw anything away. You set it on fire in a red dress. I just stopped covering the smoke. The tears doubled. She paced the kitchen like a caged animal, muttering promises that arrived 10 years too late. I didn't stand, didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. The bracelet box sat unopened on the counter, right next to a framed engagement photo. Artifacts, not futures. When she finally collapsed into a chair, exhausted from her own storm, I set my book down. Do you know what the difference is between us right now? She blinked at me. You're fighting to keep the appearance of something. I'm fighting for the substance of my life. And the truth is, I already won. Because I walked out, and you can't change that no matter what you promise. Her sobs quieted to hiccups. She whispered, "You'll regret this." "No," I said. "Regret is for men who stay and rot. I'm leaving while I still have a pulse." I stood, boxed the bracelet with the photo, and slid it into a drawer. Not out of malice, not even out of nostalgia, just cataloging artifacts for a museum that no one would visit. The rest of the day passed in silence. She cried upstairs, calling friends who probably didn't answer. I made myself lunch, read another 50 pages, and went for a long walk down streets that smelled like cut grass and gasoline. That night, I slept 8 hours. Straight through. No tossing, no replaying conversations, no second guessing. Just stillness. And that's when it hit me. Quiet wasn't absent anymore. It wasn't the hollow sound of an empty booth or an empty house. Quiet had become space. Room for me to exist without bending, without covering, without carrying someone else's lies. The papers were served. The story was over. Closure is a closed door, and mine had finally latched shut. Weeks later, I found myself driving past the restaurant. Habit, maybe. Muscle memory retracing the same streets I'd taken 1,000 times before, when anniversaries still meant something. Through the big front windows, I caught a reflection of the corner booth. Same candlelight, same white tablecloths, same hum of voices over dinner. But instead of vertigo, I felt something cleaner. Gratitude. That booth had stopped being an altar the moment she walked in wearing the red dress. Now it was just furniture in a place that sells steak. I pulled into the lot, killed the engine, and sat for a minute. 10 years of my life had been staged in that corner, like a play I thought would never end. But love without honesty isn't love. It's theater. And I was done being cast. Back home, the bracelet sat boxed with the engagement photo, both tucked away in a drawer I never opened. Not out of bitterness, but because they belonged to a past version of me. A man who built his whole world on trust that was never returned. That man deserved better. And now he had it. I started recording my story for the channel I'd built. Nothing flashy, just me and a camera in the garage. One man talking plain, no script, no filters. Would you have walked in? I asked the lens. Would you have walked out? Here's what I learned: balance isn't loud. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Let the silence carry your truth. I clicked stop. No dramatics, no flourish, just my voice captured, steady and unbroken. When I stepped outside, the evening smelled like rain. The air was cool against my face, the kind that wakes you up and makes you feel 10 pounds lighter. I realized then that the most valuable thing I'd reclaimed wasn't money, furniture, or even reputation. It was my voice, and with it, my peace.
Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.